All right. It's the night or the evening before UFC 289. It's been a minute since we've been on here talking MMA. It's Behind the Lava and the Faika podcast. And one of our sponsors, Matai Watches. And we'll definitely hear from our two today. We've got Spencer and Milford. Welcome, you guys.
What up?
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice, nice. And we're just going to go through, we just wanted to have a show. This isn't, and we can probably talk about this a little bit in terms of, the card, right? Because there's been a lot of talk of like, should this be a pay per view card? And it's kind of, to me, it's one of those tweeners. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go over, we're going to preview the show. That's how we're going to end it up. We're going to preview UFC 289, the main card. And if there's people we want to talk about outside of the main card, we can do that too. We're going to do our buy or sell segment. We got a few things out there right now in the MMA world that we want to see whether we like it, whether we don't like it, whether we think it's going to happen or not going to happen. And then this is one of the few shows that you're going to find in MMA where we pride ourselves in our inability to pick correctly with fights. So everybody on the show, and Joe's not here today, but he's of the same mindset. We all believe that we are the absolute worst at picking fights. I am the worst. We're going to find out just who so far this year is the worst at this point. And then hopefully, we can continue to get the scoreboard. I think Spencer's keeping track. So as we make picks for UFC 289, he can pick those up and then we can get updates as we go. So we're just going to hop right into buy or sell. I think it was January of this year. The linear heavyweight champion, not just the UFC champion, but who's considered the heavyweight champion of the world, walked away from the UFC. There was a lot of talk about where he was going to go. There was a lot of speculation when he was unsigned. And since then, we know where he's landed. He's landed with the PFL. And there has been talk of super fights. There's been talk of, boxing, all these kind of things. So the question today is, are you buying or selling? Was it a good idea for Francis to leave the UFC? Right now, we know a little bit more than we did, in the beginning. It was all speculation of where he was going to land. What could he do? Was he going to box? We have some idea now. The picture's cleared up just a little bit. Start with you, Spencer. Are you buying or selling? Was it a good idea for Francis to leave the UFC?
I am buying big time. I think it was a great idea because, this man has so many moments in his life that are just like, that like they got to make an inspirational movie about this man's life someday. We know the story about him. Like the running theme is that he is not afraid to bet on himself, whether that means leaving Cameroon, wanting to be more than a dirt farmer, crossing over borders and being exported, or deported over and over again, but not giving up on himself because he knew that he was capable of greatness all the way up till now, even when he's at the top of his division. He holds all the cards. He's still not afraid to bet on himself. He's like, you know what? I came from literally nothing, and you're not just going to buy me off with these pittance when I know that this company is doing so much more, income wise. He's like, I know I'm worth more. And it wasn't the crazy part is that wasn't just about the money. It's that he wanted to have a bigger say in advancing the sport, basically. He wanted to have a say. He wanted his opponents to get more money. He wanted to actually have an active role in being an ambassador of the sport to Africa. And so the man wasn't afraid to put it all on the line. Had one fight left with the UFC. We know the story. Bets on himself, wins big, and holds out until they decided not to renew with him. And it was looking shady for a while, where it's like, he's going to end up with nothing. But he ended up getting everything that he wanted with this deal. And I was just so happy to see that. I remember about a beginning of this year, we were fortunate enough on Behind the Lava to do an episode with Ray Sefo, president of the PFL. And we asked him, because that was the big news, is Francis is a free agent. Are you looking into that? And of course, he's not going to give us in-depth, breaking news when they're still in the talks with him. But he's like, yes, we're very interested in working with Francis, and we'll pursue that. And I'm just glad that you know Uncle Ray got it done. So I'm buying big time. I'm very happy that Francis got what he got, and I hope it sets trends for the other promotions to follow suit.
Yeah, I think there's first of all, shout out to Behind the Lava Lava for landing that. I think a lot of people don't understand the position and lineage that Ray Sefo has in the combat sports, not just from a combat sport athlete component, but being a piece of the business after he's done fighting. So great job for you guys for landing that. And for those of you watching, if you haven't seen that, definitely go check that out. You make a lot of good points. One of the things that really irritated me was when Dana White said that, you know, Francis doesn't want to take a lot of risks. And that part I looked at and just thought, wow, he's been not averse to taking risks his entire life. And coming from like I said, we all know the story, from a laborer in a sand mine to where he's at now. So great points. I do think the same thing as me. When you take that last fight with bad knees and all the things that are going on, you risk it and you win. So hopefully he keeps winning. Milford, how about you? You buying or selling? Was that a good idea? Good decision on his part?
On his behalf, I think it was a good idea, just for him and his own what you call it, mental state and well being and how he feels. But as far as like momentum goes for the way things are going right now, the return of John Jones, I'm just like, man, why'd you gotta leave now? like things are starting to get good, things are starting to get great, especially with Sergey too. Sergey and Jones, those two fights would definitely be fireworks. But just on his behalf, for sure, man. Like, do what you feel is right. And um, Uncle Ray is getting a chance right now to show why he's the president, and we get to see what he's capable of as someone who's been successful so far and who can take it to another level.
Yeah, we have that chat going on. We have a group chat going on, and when that announcement came out, that was what was put into the chat was Uncle Cephal got it done. And other than probably a John Jones, I mean a Conor McGregor signing in terms of magnitude, it's probably, aside from that name, that's probably the biggest signing in terms of MMA that we've had so far. So it's been an interesting journey to watch. I'm the same. I'm buying. I think that somebody needs to break the seal. Right? You had Kurt Flood that did the free agency in Major League Baseball. You have these people that go out on a limb and kind of show people that it can be done a different way. And to hear of all the things that he wanted to do, he wants to start a league in Africa. He wants to, work towards higher pay for everybody. He wants endorsements. He wants to be able to box, and he got it all. Like Spencer said earlier, he got it all. So looks like we're all buying with that. We'll have to get Joe's input when he's back on, but yeah, I think that's a good idea for him. So we're kind of staying in that arena. Um, if you're a boxing fan, right now we're getting the fights that we want. Right, for a long time, boxing would have we would have like Pacquiao and Mayweather. That fight just didn't happen when it was supposed to happen. It happened, in my opinion, a couple years late. And when it finally did happen, it was one of the biggest fights ever, right? But why wasn't it done at the right time? And then you have Usyk and Fury that isn't happening, but then we're getting some fights that are happening. Dana White has always been of the mind that the problem here is that you have too many chefs in the recipe, and that's why fights don't happen. So Dana has talked about getting into boxing and trying to run it like the UFC, and he's a Trump fan, so I said, make boxing great again. Buying or selling? Would it be a good thing for the fans? I guess not necessarily. It's hard to say, quantify that, whether it's good for the boxing as an organization or not. But would it be good for fans? And I know that Milford's a big boxing fan, but is it good for fans if Dana White were to get into boxing and create something like the UFC? And we'll start with Milford.
I think it would be as far as his matchmaking capabilities go. Now, the money in the contracts, I don't know about that, but Definitely, he'd hold fighters accountable to fighting at their level or even higher, or something equal to. But as a promoter, I think he'd do excellent if he had control.
Yeah, I think that piece of that is would the fans win, and that's one of the things the UFC does well is if the fans want to see something, and for hardcore fans, sometimes it's a little irritating with like you have rankings, right? But if this is the fight the fans want to see, Dana's going to do it, regardless of whether the guy is ranked seventh, eighth, first, former champ or not. He's going to make the fight happen, and that's something that is a little different. I think it's part of it is is the model that they started out. They started out after modeling after the WWF at the time, and that's kind of the same thing. It's like, what do the fans want? We're going to give it to them. Spencer, I don't know if you're a huge boxing fan or not, but that's really the landscape of boxing. Is there's a whole bunch of different organizations and promoters. So sometimes fighters, they don't get together at the right time. You buying or selling if Dana White were to get into boxing?
Well, I wish I was a more versed boxing fan. I'm definitely more behind than I used to be, but I'm gonna say I'm selling on this because of two words: Zuffa Boxing. Dana White has been trying to start Zuffa affiliated boxing promotion forever, but he bails on that and makes slap fighting. He bails on that and he promotes all sorts of other things. And Dana has obviously look, the man is a big success. If you want to succeed, you get Dana on your team. I'm not trying to make it sound like the guy um, is a complete failure. That's obviously not the case. But I think the problem is that because boxing and the sports world of it is so old, I don't know what Dana can offer to really break that mold, because you may get I don't know if you can get the fighters that people want to see fight and convince them to basically fight on an MMA model, where in my presumption there's no way that Zuffa is ever going to pay those boxers what boxers getting paid with the existing models that there are. So you're not going to get these boxers because the minute you start paying them more, now all your MMA guys who are already sour grapes about why they can't get paid more are like, look, now the parent company who's screwing us over is doing it while also paying out top dollar to these boxers. I think it'll disrupt the order of business with all of his other endeavors. And because of that, I don't think that boxing is ever something that Dana White can get off the ground. And so that's just me being skeptical. Um, yeah, I'm selling on that one.
I'm with you on that. I think, and mainly because so Dana has and the UFC has, they've got MMA not bottled up. I don't want to say it that way, but they have control of it, right? They're the big dog on the block, and they're able to make things happen the way that they want. Once that breaks, so for example, if Francis leaving causes a whole bunch of other fighters to leave as well and strike out on their own, and they start making contracts with the PFL to be and the PFL is creating their own division, the super fight division for them, and those things start happening. I think that it's hard to put that all back together again, right? And that's what he'd have to be doing in boxing. Is it's already out of the bottle. He'd have to be going out there and getting things and kind of putting them back together. I think the model the UFC has right now works because it hasn't flown apart. That's kind of what I'm kind of interested to see where Francis is taking us if he's moving the needle that far. But I'm selling with that. I just don't think you can get it done. I don't think you can get that done in the MMA model that's out there right now. Really good
It's
podcast. The Freakonomics podcast had an interview with Ari Emanuel, the head of Endeavor. And man, that is a great interview. He talks about Dana and Dana's ability to get things done and kind of muscling it through in COVID, how Dana opened up really sports, right? So Ari talks about how people followed Dana, but they didn't really think he could get it done in COVID and continue to have events, right? And go buy an island or rent an island and do all these things. Those were all Dana White ideas. And to hear somebody as visionary as Ari Emanuel talking about and admiring the things that Dana's doing. If you're an MMA fan, you should go check that out. It's the Freakonomics podcast interview with Ari Emanuel. I think it came out last week or the week before, but kind of gives you an idea of Dana's mindset. I think I stepped on somebody when I started that.
Just let me clarify my comments. I don't think he could start a promotion, but if he were given charge over some, miraculous promotion that came together by the money of oil tycoons, you know, something like that, where all boxers were under the banner. Yeah, I think he could definitely run that. But as far as like some Zuffa boxing, heck no.
Yeah, kind of think he would have made it happen already. To Spencer's point, he's been trying for years to get that put together, but I think just because of the model of MMA and the way that boxing is, I don't know how he gets his arms around all that and makes it happen. But all right, we got to get to UFC 289. So looks like we're selling mostly on that. So Tough 31, The Ultimate Fighter season 31. The head coaches are Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. I don't know if you've watched any of this. I think I watched the first episode. I haven't caught up if it's obviously past the second episode, but there's been questions about this, right? So the question is that when would this fight be scheduled? And that depends on Conor McGregor entering the USADA testing pool. You got to be in the pool for 6 months before you can fight. There was talk in May. Absolutely, we're going to do it. I think he was on Ariel's podcast. He talked about it. He's going to. USADA put out a statement and said, yes, he's going to. As recent as 5 days ago, it still hasn't happened. He still hasn't entered the pool, which here's the question. Does this fight happen? Does Connor fight? Because he's talked about entering the USADA pool, but he hasn't. And the question becomes when you start doing the math, I guess a better question is, does he fight? And a second piece of that, if it's not Michael Chandler, does he fight at all in 2023? Are you buying? And we'll start with Milford.
Maybe if he enters it this month.
Do you think that fight ever happens?
With Chandler, maybe, because there has to be some type of obligation for him to be a coach on the Ultimate Fighter, contractually. But I wasn't aware of that, the whole USADA thing. I didn't know he was still sitting outside the pool.
Yeah, well, he's been saying, "Yep, I'm gonna."
Yeah.
USADA even said, obviously, it seems like they got communication from Connor because they said, "Yes, we intend to," or basically, it's in the process, it's happening. But as recent as 5 days ago, still not happening. And the reason I question it is they asked Dana if he's worried about it, and Dana said, I'm going to paraphrase here, "Am I worried about it? No, I've got tons of fighters that want to fight and beat Conor McGregor. So people can't make things happen. We can make it happen." It's basically what he said. And that doesn't really answer the question. It just says we'll be successful if Conor decides not to fight anymore. And then that's why I made this, because it made me think, well, what's actually going on there? And he's still not in the pool. So that's why I question where this is actually even going to happen. I really question whether he's going to fight in 2023. But so
like that hazmat in Nick Diaz, magical switcheroo.
Right.
Maybe keeping something up the sleeve right now and just acting like nothing's happening.
Yeah, and I picked the picture for a reason, right? Like he's looked pretty juicy in the.
He's yoked.
That guy is probably up around 190. Like he's huge at this point, and when him and Alexander Volkanovski got into it, Volkanovski offered to go up to 155, and then Connor was like, "Well, why is there got to be?" He was basically saying, "I don't want to fight at 155." And then at Ultimate Fighter, he actually said, "I want to do the fight at 185 with Chandler." And Chandler said, "I'll do 185." And Connor, in Connor fashion, said, "You'll do what you're told." You'll do what you're told. But it's just a question in my mind. So do you think yes or no that him and Chandler will fight this year?
Yes.
As a fan, I hope you're right. How about you, Spence?
Man, it's hard to say, but I'm gonna be positive about this one. I'll say yes as well. I can see them aiming for like a December. They usually like to have a big end of the year event, and I could see this being that. Um, and that gives him time to get off that acai and and get jump in the testing pool, have your summer training, train through the fall, whatever, and get in there. And I mean, look, and it's if I'm Connor, I'm looking at this like this is the fight to make too. Like you're co-promoting it already by doing this Ultimate Fighter thing. I think it's a great matchup. I haven't watched it yet because I canceled my ESPN Plus. So too broke right now, but but the but I mean Chandler's the guy. Like their personalities are polar opposites, but they both draw attention. Not only that, but even matchup wise, Chandler's a good opponent for if Connor needs a W to like get momentum. I've been saying for years I like to see that fight, but I think Connor takes that just because Chandler is a very aggressive uh, puncher who likes to lead with his head, while Connor is a very good counter striker. With he's got him on height and reach. I think he's got a lot of natural advantages. Where I'm like, this is a guy who's going to bring excitement. You're co-promoting on a tough season. This is the guy. Like, make it happen, and whatever. If this is so, I'm buying. I think he can make it happen. I hope he hurries up and finishes his cycle or whatever he has to do so he can get in the pool. But man, come on, this is like it's too perfect of a fight to let this opportunity slip through. So I'm hoping it happens.
Yeah, as a fan, I'm buying, but I don't see this. I think there's something going on. I mean, the videos uh, of Connor in Monaco at the Grand Prix and him not getting in the pool when he was supposed to get in the pool. I'm concerned about whether he ever fights again. But I don't think he fights again this year. As a fan, I really hope we see Connor back in and fighting. And I think to your point, Chandler is hittable, and what Connor's able to put his fists on is huge effect. And Connor's extremely accurate. And I think that isn't tailor made. Michael Chandler's not tailor made for anybody, but I think that's a really good matchup in fireworks. There's no way it's going the distance, but
Well,
I don't think it happens this year.
right. And let me just say this real quick too, because the only thing that bothers me about this matchup is the weight class thing. Because Connor, he's always going to get the shortcut to a title shot. It's just what he does. Like I won't dispute how he got his featherweight title shot. That is what it is. But come on, I mean, he has a losing record at 155, but
Right.
he's always one win away from fighting for that belt. If that's the case, so be it. I get it. That's the Conor McGregor rule. But the problem is, if you're not booking this at 155, don't jump him to a 155 title shot. And then if you beat Michael Chandler at 170, how are you justifying a title shot there? Because Michael Chandler is not even a ranked welterweight, So you get a title shot at welterweight by being a oversized lightweight. Like it. And look, they'll make it happen, but that's the stuff where it's like we get further and further into the dumb territory that bothers me. I'm like, at some point, don't call yourself the greatest MMA promotion out there if belts start to literally mean nothing because of stuff like this. I get it. He's going to have the shortcut, but don't give him the shortcut in every possible way imaginable, and I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, that he immediately gets the title shot, but Dana will always be on board if that's the case. And it's like, don't give him a title shot at 170 by fighting a guy who's not ranked at 170.
And that's the flip side of what we talked about with Dana, right? Like we're going to give the fans what they want to see. People want to see Connor fight. I could be wrong, but I think his last win was pre-COVID, January of 2020. It but he's still out there as a name. You know what I mean? Like he's still out there. People are still tuning in. I think Tough 31 is the highest rated Tough series in a long time, and so I think that unfortunately, I do think he gets the title shot if he gets a win, but he's got to get the win. But hopefully I'm wrong, and I'm like we're going to get into the scoreboard here in a second, and I'm usually wrong, so I hope I'm wrong here. But I just think there's something going on with Connor that's going to keep him out of the cage. All right. So where are we going now? We are going to okay. So here's and I guess it kind of goes back to the first thing, right? Francis leaves the UFC, fans miss out on Francis versus John Bones Jones, and then all this chatter starts between John Jones and Tyson Fury, and then we have Chael, who's always a company guy, talking about Tyson Fury's offered a UFC fight. It's the Dana White always like, if you want to make some money, let's sit down and talk together. Weren't numbers put together for it, but there's definitely heat on social media between John Jones and Tyson Fury. There's the talk of it. There is, speculation that the UFC has to answer Francis going to the PFL, and is there going to be some kind of cross promotion? So here's the question: does this ever happen in any format? Do an MMA and then do a boxing, do boxing then MMA, do boxing with 4-ounce gloves, do some kind of gimmick exhibition match kind of thing? Do these two ever end up fighting under any format, buying or selling? And let's start with Milford.
Selling. Uh, Tyson Fury's probably, easily one of the greatest boxers just because of his height and reach and footwork and IQ out there. He can't be touched, but you mix him with MMA, man. He's a big dude. Freaking, he's gonna fall hard, especially against somebody like John Jones. We already seen what happened. Was it James Tony?
Oh yeah, Randy
And,
Couture.
and Randy, yeah. I would love to see a boxing match. You got an 85-inch reach on Tyson and 84 and a half with John Jones, except, 6'9" and 6'4". And freaking what Deontay Wilder's, 6'7", 6'6". And we saw how still that was a significant advantage for, at least for someone who knows what they're doing.
Right.
But yeah, and I would love to see it happen, but I don't. Even as confident as Tyson is in himself, I just don't see this happening at all.
I'm with you. I'm selling as well. As much as I'd like to see it, I think neither one, there's an ego there. Both of these guys have, legacy in mind. They have huge egos, and that has served them well. That's how they got to where they're at. But I don't see John Jones saying, "Hey, let's box Tyson Fury." I don't see that as a good idea at all for John Jones. And I don't see Tyson Fury saying, well, let me fight where John Jones can take me down and do things that he does. And so I think from a legacy standpoint, neither fighter wants to do this. I don't think either one wants to do a mixed rules or some kind of a pride or a one kind of thing either. I'm selling. I wish it would happen in some form or fashion, but I'm selling. How about you, Spencer?
Selling as well, because just for the same reason you guys mentioned. Look, it's no controversial thing to say, like, if the top NBA basketball team calls out a football team and says, "Hey, we'll destroy you on the court." Of course, the basketball players are going to win in playing basketball. But in my mind, Tyson has already taken the L, because this all started because Joe Rogan was saying on his podcast that John Jones would mess him up in a real fight. And Fury was caught in his feelings, and he responded and he says, "I will destroy him." He made it sound like in a real fight. He didn't say boxing match. He says, "If we go in a room and only one of us can leave, I promise you I will leave." So that is saying in a real fight, no rules, all skills allowed. But then he doubles back when people start talking about this more. And then he stops and he says, "I'm not going to get in a cage. I'm a boxer. You come here and box with me." I'm like, "Oh, so you're changing it now. We're not talking about going in a room and only one man walks out."
Right.
In my mind, he's taken the L already, because he has to go back and like, no, you have to basically, this is the NBA team calling out the NFL team. No, come play basketball with us. We'll destroy you. It's like, yeah, we get it. In your set rules, you are king. But that's not what the discussion started out as. It started out as, in a real fight or an MMA fight, John Jones win, where all skills are available and anything goes. And so, But in another way, Tyson already wins too, because he will never be in a position like our MMA legends, like an Anderson Silva or an Nate Diaz or something, where he has to go do some celebrity boxing match at the end of his career because that's how the only way he can still keep making money. This man, when he's done, he could be done now and he'll still never have to work another day in his life because he's so paid. And so, in that sense, he's already winning. But in a fight, he loses, and he's indirectly already admitted that by changing and doubling back, like, "Oh no, no, no! You come here and box. That's the only way I'll fight you."
Yeah,
Done.
he did
Done.
end up with the I'm not rolling around on the ground with some man, like it definitely came. If it went down to it and the two guys were locked in a room, John Jones is the one that walks out of that room in my
100%.
yeah. All right. So we're all selling with that. Scoreboard. Who is the worst on the team? Who picks the worst? Because we all say we pick the worst. Milford, sorry to say, but it is not you. You are first. You're the best fight picker. So we can no longer hear from Milford about how bad his picks are. Actually, when I show you the data, it's Milford's a 56.3% correct rate, right? 56% of his picks are correct. Joe's second at 54.5. Somehow I'm at 50%, and that's just wrong. Spencer's at 46. I'm sure that I'm going to claim that bottom spot. I'm going to reclaim that from Spencer soon. But Milford, can you explain yourself? Like 56%, way over half. Like you can't even call yourself a bad fight picker anymore, can you?
I can. I pay my tithing, so I
I
just got
can.
lucky on these ones. That was it. I was trying to be more, and Heavenly Father lifted me up.
I've often thought about like, let me see if I could just get them all wrong. And then I'm thinking, no, but then I'm trying to use my head to pick a fight. I'd still be getting like I think it's just I'm a bad fight picker. And if somehow I end up at 50% and I blame this on that last event. I think I was 5-2 or some ridiculously good percentage. But Spencer, I'm coming for you. You're not gonna you don't get that spot down there.
Now you
Uh,
give me good competition for sure. You know,
Once again, the Behind the Lava and the FICA podcast MMA show, the only one you're going to find anywhere on YouTube, on anywhere on social media, where we are, and we're not trying to throw fights either. We're actively trying to pick fights correctly, and we're just not that good at it. 56% is first place, so we'll see how we go through the year. We have this one right now. We're going to grab some picks. I think Spencer's going to take some notes so we can figure out and keep score as we go. But everybody made weight today. Um, I did watch the weigh-ins and the replacement fighter Raquel Pennington. Whew, she looked out of it at the weigh-in, but she made weight. Everybody made weight, I believe. But real quick, just a quick sentence: is this pay per view worthy? There's a lot of buzz online, and with the experts that this isn't. I'll go first with this. I think it is. I mean, um, Spencer and I were talking about this earlier. Dariush and Oliveira, like these are must wins for both of them. Dariush needs to get over that hump and get his title shot. Like he's always been right there around it. And then, Oliveira's got to prove that he's still got what it takes. He's only one fight out of the championship. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's important. And then to me, that's the GOAT up there. Um, I think that Amanda Nunes is if it's not a clear cut case, right? If she's not number one, she is definitely number two. Aldana's got the striking. Like how is that going to work out? So I myself believe this is a weak pay per view, but I do believe it should be pay per view. How about you, Milford?
Uh, I mean, I guess just to respect the champions, it should be. That whole structure. Like if we got a title match, it's a pay per view for sure. But
Gotcha.
I mean, respect to them, Nunes and Aldana. I mean, I think Oliveira and Darius should be, the main event for this one over
Yeah,
those two.
it's co-main, so they get paid for that structure. But
or
you
at
know,
least the headliner.
yeah. You got a great point, right? There's a
Yeah,
chance it's a title fight, so it should be a pay-per-view. Good point.
yeah. But I don't know. These cards that don't seem like the most exciting sometimes tend to be, some of the most satisfying finishes everywhere type of cards. But I'm with you. I think at least the last four fights and maybe Ige and Nate the Great will be worthy, but it's still kind of weak to me. I'm with you on that one.
Spence?
Yeah, I'll say no, and only because of this. Like I used to be a little more lenient with this, where I'm like, we have so many fighters on the roster. You're the biggest MMA promotion, so you got to have the most fighters. That's how you determine who is really worthy of the best, because you have to have a bigger pool to work your way to the top. They get a lot of heat for having all these fight nights at the what was it called? I'm blanking
Apex.
out. The Apex. Thank you.
Oh,
But I think that's a good way to have like lower name fighters that are making their way up. But um, the problem is that the UFC has actively invited harsher criticism by constantly raising their pay-per-view rates, which has gone up dramatically in the last few years. I bought my first UFC pay-per-view when it was Lesnar versus Overeem. 50, I think it was $50 for like the standard definition stream, 55 or 60 for like the HD stream. I got that standard, but it was and it stayed pretty steady for a while. Then they bumped it up to 60. Then they bumped it up to 65. Then they bumped it up to 70. And in the last 3, 4 years, mainly since they teamed up with ESPN, we're all the way up. What is it, 80 bones now, if you want to tune in? Um, Look, you are inviting harsher criticism when you are asking for more of my hard-earned dollars uh, for the pleasure of viewing this. And so, no, like I'll say straight up, you know what? There are some great fights on here, but you got to beef this up a little more if you honestly expect people to pay more than the last time that you came to Canada. Because I think the last Canadian pay per view card was Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, and they even had I think Glover Teixeira was on that. Like that was a better card then, and it cost less. Now you're like, hey, Canada, we're back, and here's two good fights, and and like we have some other decent ones on there, but you're gonna pay a lot more, and the Canadians end up paying more than we do anyways. Like just as far as exchange rates go. So, anyways, no, I think just because they ask so much more for a pay-per-view now, I'll say straight up say, no, this ain't a pay-per-view card.
yeah, and that's a good point. Of they're the only game in town. You got all the talent. How come the cards aren't all stacked? Like you put the ones at the Apex that aren't, and then keep the hard earned money, the $80 cards. Like those should be stacked. That's a really good point. So we're gonna start at the bottom and work our way up. Um, oh, did I forget? I did not put the names on here. Whew. Can you guys help me out with this? Because I made the slides and I don't have the fights. This it looks to be a
Eric
wow.
Anders and Mark Andre Barrio.
Yeah, Anders. I got Anders, but oh, okay. I got you. I got my picks written down. So Anders is definitely is jinxed at this point. I'm going to win this back. Are those fights? Are those weights right? Those weights got to not those can't be the right weights. But let's talk about this for a second. I like Anders just from a pressure moving forward, controlling the pace. But this to me was kind of this was one of those that in my mind a lot of them are toss ups, but this was not one that I was real confident with. How about you guys?
Same. Like I'm familiar more so with Eric Anders, not so much with Marc Andre, which I feel bad saying that because I need to do more of my due diligence leading up to this. But uh, you know, yeah, not too familiar with this man as well. So I'm picking Anders just by default because I'm more familiar with him. But I am ready to eat crow on that one. So.
That's how we end up at the bottom of the stack, Spence.
Right. You and I pick similarly. He's too educated about all this stuff. So that's why he kind of gets it right more often.
That's why he can't say he's the worst pick. How about you, champion? What's your pick?
Well, seems like Anders is gonna lose tomorrow because I picked him too. He's cursed. Just out of huge fandom. And
It's the PI
I,
curse. Look at his records too.
yeah, very similar, but
Very similar.
so, huge fan for the same reasons why you guys like him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this should be, on paper, this is a banger, right? This two guys
Mhm.
go forward, not afraid to lose. But yeah, now name value, name recognition is where I went with this one. Now this is the Pacific Islander Dan 50K Ige against Nate the Great, and again similar records. You know, I it's hard for me, and this is probably why I end up at the worst pick. I'll go first. I'm taking Dan 50K Ige, and he's the favorite. But I think this when I went through the sites and kind of watched and listened, Nate is most people are picking as the livest underdog on the card. So in other words, it's a pick 'em fight. But if it's a pick 'em fight, I'm going PI. I'm going with Hawaiian. Spence, how about you?
Yes, sir. Same for the same reason. Nate's looked good since he came into the UFC. He's uh, a lifelong big fish in a small pond. I believe he's captured like 3 world titles in smaller promotions, and we've seen him look good since coming to the UFC. But I can't help but just look at Ige like he's the vet. And it's like I know looking at their number of fights, they're not too far off from each other, but he's the vet in the UFC. His caliber of opponent has been a tougher caliber of opponents, and I think that that experience is going to do him well. And you know, yep. Hopefully, we're not all going to curse him right now. But so you're picking Ige, right? Like that was your pick. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
writing this all down now. So
okay. All right. T.
We're about to get sued by the UFC for cursing these fighters because I picked EA too. I
Nobody's
can't
moving any ranking spots because we're all picking the same fighters.
I can't I can't see Nate dealing with EA speed.
Yeah.
The only thing I see him doing is keeping him at bay with his reach and maybe landing a timely counterpunch. But other than that, I think EA speed and wrestling, striking is superior. Nate's superior in his post fight interviews. I'll give him that. But
Got more skill in the mic.
yeah, he's fun. But EA,
Well, one of the things I love about Ige is that some of the poly fighters don't have the gas tank, right? Like they're out early and they bring a storm, but if the other fighter weathers a storm, I think Holloway, Whitaker, and Ige is one of them where that's not the case. Like they're going to bring it the whole fight, and man, Ige is winging from bell to bell. He's looking for the finish the whole time. So hard fight to pick, especially when I hear that he's the livest dog on the card. That's not what I wanted to hear, but
right,
so
and
far,
I'm hoping also that he just gets a lot of good. If you watch his interview at the press conference day, he seems pretty at home in Canada. Like he's saying, I see why Max Holloway was talking about why this is the 10th island,
mm,
and like I lived in Canada for 2 years, and I actually went a long time without seeing another Polynesian until there's this area that I was in called Drayton Valley, middle of nowhere, small town in Alberta, which I love that place. Wonderful, wonderful place. And there was this guy, this Tongan guy, um, that was a friend of somebody in our ward. He's like, "Hey, you guys should come to this big old banquet, this luau thing we're doing." And we drove out in the middle of the woods, like foresty area. But then you start hearing the music, you start seeing all like the spread. And I'm like, I swear, I was like, I didn't know this many Polynesians were in Canada at that time.
wow,
And like, yeah, there was a bunch of them. They were all gathered in the middle of the woods in Alberta, and man, I felt so at home. I got to eat the food I'd been missing. First time I'd ever tried horse. Shout out to the tacos. Like, man, that was it was a legit gathering. And so like for real, it's like I've never been to where this fight is taking place, but from that one experience, I know there's polys out there, and I know that every UFC fight, poly UFC fighter that goes there, they always give a shout out to all the support they get. They're like, "This is 10th Island out here." I believe it, and I hope that gives Ige a boost.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have him feeling comfortable out there. And I spent some time in Alberta, Edmonton, Red Deer, way out there, and but I was there in January, and let me tell you, well, you used to live there, but it was like I was thinking this is uninhabitable for humans. It was cold, cold. Like I've never felt that cold
That
before.
exact thought went through my mind. It was like -40. That's
Yeah.
about what it is around that time of year, -40. It
Woo.
doesn't matter if you say Fahrenheit or Celsius because that's when the 2 meet. It's -40 for either scale. So
There was these gas stations that were, and the initials for the gas stations were UFA, and I was driving. I wasn't driving, but my one of the guys who worked for me was driving, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, pull over, pull over!" And so I got out to take a picture next to the gas the pump that said UFA, and I got out and had him take the picture, and I had a coat on and everything. I got out, and all I did was squat down next to the pump so you could see the sign. He took a picture. I got back in. I was like, I couldn't know that I could have spent much more time outside. It just was crazy cold out there. So I'm glad I'm back where I'm at. All right. So we're jinxing 3 consecutive fighters here. We're gonna move on, and hopefully we're picking something different. And these records look similar as well. I'm gonna let our champion go first and make the pick, and hopefully there's some differences.
I'm gonna go with Adam on this one, just because he's American.
All right, going to the USA.
Well, aren't they both American? Or
yeah,
one's Canadian.
American Junior.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Adam. Didn't he have a good finish in his last fight? I'm kind of out of touch with this both these fighters.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, our champion is taking a
A gamble, shot in the dark.
uh-oh. So what do you know about the other fighter?
Not much. That's why when I looked at this card, I was like, "Oh, this pay-per-view."
right.
Yeah.
Look, this is not something that should reflect so much on us and how educated we are on the sport. This reflects on the quality of this friggin' card, all right?
Yeah, like Chris
Yeah.
Curtis should be on the main card, you know?
Right.
1 and 9 and 3, and you're on the main card. You're on the pay-per-view.
And the thing is like when stuff like that happens, I usually understand because they're trying to promote a local boy at
Mhm.
these events, but these guys are both from the US. So
Yeah.
maybe I got something mixed up. One may have relocated and grown up
Well,
there.
Mike on the website has him as, says Canada on the
All right, so
UFC
maybe that's
website.
why. That's probably why then.
But
You
I,
can tell this is an educated guess we're going to make on this one. We don't even know where they're from, which is why our scores are the way that they are. Who you got, Spence?
Well, if he's going Adam, I'm going with Mike because this way we can actually get a little diversity in our picking. But not only that, but it's like, you know what? Let's try to each throw a curse one way or another and balance it out. Maybe we'll just get a good fight. So
All
I'm
right, for
picking
no
Mike.
other reason other than I want to gain ground on that position that Spence is holding. I'm going with Mike.
Gotcha.
Right. Here we go. Here's the one that there is a title fight, and I am interested in the title fight, but this is the fight that I'm tuning in for. This is the one I want to see. We have the former champ and who's had losses before, right? Charles Oliveira has had losses in his career before, and following losses, he's been able to gather himself and make it all the way to the top and defend, right? And you have Beneil Dariush, who has been, just sniffing the title shot right there, hasn't been able to get past that. This would get him in that spot, assumedly. This would put him there. So I will go first. I'm going Dariush. I think that it's his time. I think that they're on different trajectories at this point. And I hate to do this because I think I love Oliveira. He's one of my favorite fighters, and I'm trying to go with my head here, not my heart. But I think that the resiliency of Dariush and his style is going to be good. See him getting submitted. after getting rocked, maybe. But I'm going Dariush. Let's we'll let our champion go last. Spence, who you got?
I also have Dariush because I like Charles a lot. Like he's like another one of those guys where if you want to show people who aren't as familiar with the sport a good fight, you invite him to a Charles Oliveira fight. The man can do it all. He can strike, he can grapple, he sets records with his submissions, etc. And I even have a feeling like I don't want to write him off either. I know that he had a very bad performance in his last title defense where he loses. But to me, it just felt like it was an off day. You have an off day at work with normal jobs. You might show up late. You might get, you know, one thing wrong or another. You have a bad day on the job as a fighter. You lose. You lose your belt. You know, it sets you back a few paces. I'm willing to think that Charles just had an off day. But that being the case, I feel like Dariush is that guy who he's just that a dark horse in the division. He's in the same position as like Jacare Souza when he was still hovering around, never got a title fight, but he was on like an 8-fight win streak, and they were just throwing him all the guys. They just wanted to make it a big battle royale between Weidman and Silva and Rockhold. That's like, but all these other guys like Yoel Romero and Jacare, like you guys can just stay in the mids tier area and fight each other so that the champions can just cycle through each other over and over, which is a shame because you fast forward a few years, you get that Jacare fight against Chris Weidman, who was the champ at the time, and he beats him. And I just feel like Dariush is just one of those guys where he doesn't have the it factor that makes the UFC want a promotion because he's a very down to earth guy. But when it comes to skills, he's a very good striker. He's kind of a brawler as well, which you don't get that from his personality because he's so humble and soft spoken. But this man keeps his hands low, and like he's very skilled and meticulous and patient. But when it comes to swinging and banging, he can do it. Like it is that last fight with Gamrot, round 3, they're just like he's parrying a bunch of Gamrot's blows. He's against the fence, and then just one clean left hook just drops him, just made him fold over himself. But he's no slouch on the grappling as well. We've seen him have great success, and I don't know. I have a feeling that he's just better than a lot of people know, and as good as a lot of the people in the know are already aware of. And I think things go his way. I like the guy a lot. I like Charles a lot, but I'm going with the dark horse in this one.
Man, he's got big things to overcome with Spencer and I both picking him. How about you, T?
Huge fan of Darius. You watch the Embedded series with him, and he's got his family with him everywhere he goes, his wife and his 2 daughters. And I'm gonna go the opposite direction though of Carl. I'm gonna go with my head instead of my heart. I'm picking. I want Darius to win, but I'm picking Oliveira to come out with some.
How you see that happening? You think? Because I could see in my mind, I could see, after they get warm, maybe Charles catching him, with a knee or a strike or something, and then able to submit him or something. But how do you see? Do you see in your mind a way that Charles wins?
Either a head kick or a elbow. But
Yeah.
what you call it? The good thing about Darius though is he's a brawler, but he's patient. He's not like some of the other ones that had Oliveira in trouble, but kind of gassed themselves a little. Just they weren't exactly exhausted, but just in that moment, in that flow of exhaustion, Oliveira was able to capitalize. And I don't think Darius will have that problem, but I just think Oliveira might find a lucky joint somewhere and hit him.
It's just a great fight. One of those that I want both people to win. I don't want to see either one lose. All right, let's get to that. Is not the direction I was going. I was coming here. We have who I believe is either, and it's hard for me with her and Cyborg. But I think Amanda Nunes has faced higher level of competition over the total body of work. But she's either one or two. I think the question here for me is, does Amanda Nunes show up ready and prepared? We've seen her, not necessarily get up for fights and then not have great showings. I don't know that that she can have that kind of showing, and so some of the time she's able to show up and not have her best showing and still win. I don't know that that's the case, and even in this stage of her career, I don't know if she's past her prime. But I know that she needs to come prepared, right? I'm still going with the champion. I still think that she's going to get it done. But man, Mexico's putting out some great fighters. Neither one looked real drawn out at the in comparison to Pennington. At least they didn't look real drawn out. They look pretty confident, pretty loose. So I'm going with Nunez. We'll go bounce back to Milford. Who you got in the title fight?
Nunes. Uh,
Nunez.
I think that loss kind of awakened her a little bit more hunger. And I mean, the Mexican fighters lately, they've been showing that same grit that they do in boxing, which is you
Mhm.
coming forward, coming forward, coming forward, throwing everything at you, not backing down. But mm, Aldana, I'm not quite convinced about her striking yet. I mean, I know she's a good one, but I don't know if she's good enough to handle Nunes.
All right, Spence. We gonna fully
Uh,
jinx Amanda?
yes, I am because I don't know, man. She's a proven asset in this regard because in my mind, I know people debate the her goat status, but in my mind, there is no debate. Like it is 100% Amanda because she's got accolades that I don't think are even ever going to be topped. Because yes, she's a beneficiary of the era that she comes up in, but it's kind of hard to knock that because it's kind of hard for me to say maybe Chris Cyborg when she's beaten Cyborg. She beat her faster than she beat Ronda Rousey. Every girl that's been a GOAT contender, she's beaten, like whether it be Ronda, uh, Cyborg. You could have even put in Shevchenko, but she has two wins over her. Now, granted, she is the queen of the two worst divisions in the entire UFC right now. But there was a time where, like, without doubt, I mean, look, that double champ thing means nothing to me when you don't even have enough fighters to make a top 10 ranking at women's featherweight. But look, that's not her fault. Like, she fights who the UFC sets her up to fight, and she wins. Um, I mean, it's crazy to think that there are two divisions where every person that's ever held the belt has lost to this girl. She's beaten not only previous champions, she's beaten every previous champion in two divisions. Um, I don't know. And right now, bantamweight. Well, as soon as they opened up the flyweight division, I think the bantamweight division lost a ton of steam because you had girls that were probably too big, that were hurting or too small, and they were bulking up so they can face bigger girls. And then they opened up the flyweight division, so a lot of bantamweights went down there, and the competition is just not what it used to be. And while Aldana she's looking sharp. She's looking sharp in much emptier bantamweight division, whereas Amanda's been murking the girls back when the bantamweight division was more hot stuff. And so it's hard for me to pick against her. She's the queen, and like in my mind, female GOAT status is more than solidified.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that she's the greatest of all time outright, right? Having knocked out Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, Holly Holm, beaten Shevchenko twice. There is that, there's an argument for her to be the outright GOAT. I think that when you look back at the history of MMA, you have people like Frankie Edgar and Uriah Faber, for example. They're fighting in divisions like two divisions above what they should have been at. Because not so much with Frankie, but in Uriah's case, he was at the beginning, the beginning of the sport. There just weren't enough people around, and you had divisions where people were jumping, you know, 15, 20 pounds just to get fights. And I don't think that's exactly where women's MMA is, but I think the example that you gave and the scenario that you given in two divisions right now is kind of that any fighter there could go up and be competitive or drop down and be competitive just because there's a, you know, lack of talent pool. So
And I will say that if I do see her winning this or losing this, it's going to be in the stand up. Amanda always had that power as her X factor, where she might not be the best striker, but she can land something that'll put you away. But when
Oh
you look
yeah.
at her go against, yeah, but you look at her against a very well put together striker like Jermaine Durandamine, she had trouble. She turned into Conor McGregor real quick. Oh, she's a wrestler now. Like she had to grapple her to get that W. And it's all fair game. And it's cool to see that she has diversified her skill set. But Aldana has that scrappy Mexican boxing pedigree. And if Amanda, for whatever reason, can't get her down, I could see her losing a striking match against Aldana. I mean, she does have that X factor with her power, but Aldana is a well-versed striker as far as women's bantamweights goes. And so I could look, I'm not trying to say Aldana has no chance. She definitely does.
yeah, I think the Aldana has a chance she can bring it out because Amanda brings a storm early, right? And most people don't weather the storm. But she carries that power with her later, but she's not the same fighter she is in the second, third, and beyond as she is in the first, 7 minutes of the fight. If Aldana gets past that, yeah, I think that the striking, she's right there with her. But man, the storm that Amanda brings when she brings it, not a lot of people weather that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she hits as hard as a dude.
I
You
do
just
not
see her
doubt.
flying across the ring, yeah.
Yeah, you see her hit countless people throughout her fights and just see them like kind of change their demeanor, like just
Yeah.
just a jab, just like
You can
oh,
see some of those,
uh-oh.
right? Where people that have that kind of power, they sleep people, one hitter quitter. But then you see the ones where they don't land quite, on the button, but you can, like you said, you can see where people are like, "Ooh, I didn't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm going to do what I can to avoid that." All right. So we're going to talk Matai watches. I don't know if Spence wants to talk a little bit about Matai watches or whether Milford would want to, but we definitely want to talk about our Pacific Islander entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Matai watches. Like it's a fine product. Like right there, it tells you the time while telling everybody else where you come from. So I like it is a fine product. They're killing it, Nick and all the whole crew back there, and always thankful for them for their support and proud to be affiliated with them.
I was sporting my men's Genesis A watch on the last FICA podcast. I got it in the mail, and Naki and I both were just oohing and awing before we went on air. It's an amazing product, and you're supporting your Pacific Islander entrepreneurs that are out there. And here's the thing with that, and we always say this: is Shop Pacifica, and it's not Shop Pacifica just because it's Pacific Islanders that are putting it out there. When you look at the stuff that's out there right now, the product quality is there. It's not, you're not buying some, piece of clothing or a watch or, whatever it is out there just to support. You're getting great quality product as well. So get out there and support. And anything in closing before we head off and settle in for tomorrow night's card?
Nope. Just looking forward to the fights, even though I'm not willing to pay $80 for them.
UFC 290, saw the ticket prices, and I said next time because it's out here in Salt Lake, and I was just a day late checking my Ticketmaster. And if I'm gonna go watch something, I'm watching close. I'm not sitting all the way back, next to drunks up there. I'll sit next to the drunks, ringside.
Well,
Inside.
if you're going, you want the
$900,
then go. Yeah, that's crazy. I got talking about going to a football game, and I went looked at the prices online. It's $300 a ticket for the top of the stadium. It's like, what? I mean, I don't know. So I guess some people can afford it, but no.
Yeah, I'm just real quick on that too. I'm glad that the UFC is cluing in on what a great market they have in Utah. There's a lot of it, like not just legit fight fans, but I'm like, there's certain factors that you're going to get from Utah as well that you probably won't get other places. I think, namely, uh, Brazilian fans. There's a lot of guys because LES Church in recent years like started opening up a lot of missionary work in Brazil. So a lot of guys you probably have per capita more Portuguese speaking people that are not from Brazil or Portugal in Utah than any other place. Like you look, Jose Aldo had his retirement fight there, and it was a proper send off for the man because he had a huge, roar from the crowd. And so, if you want to promote your Brazilian fighters, Utah is a good place to do it because they're great fight fans, but they're also, just for the fact of having ties to Brazil, you're going to get a big pop there. So I'm glad UFC's cluing into that.
Shout out to Pedro Sauer, one of the first BJJ schools out here. I mean, obviously Torrance was first, but Pedro Sauer school was one of the pioneers. All right. Well, until next time, I think we'll do we'll look for the watch party. So the plan is to preview. Is it 290? I'm not sure which one we wanted to preview. It might have been the Gaethje
Yeah, I think
Poirier.
it was.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do that, but we're gonna do a watch party, and we'll pick up the PBD will pick up the tab so we can all sit there and watch it in real time and not worry about whatever to worry about we might worry about normally, and comment on the fights as they go. We'll comment on the fights, so if anybody's watching, we're not going to air the fights. We'll be watching them and we can comment in real time.
I mean, it's like you're there already. That's all you need. You need our commentary. That's it.
Me
losing in real time. That's what you need.
Milford continuing to trail the pack by winning all the picks. So it's just you, me, Spence, just you, me, and Joe. Now we can have the conversation about who's the worst.
Joe's not far off, though. I said that one time, y'all suck at sucking. So.
We can't even get that right of who's the worst at fight picking. All right, fellas. Appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.
Take care. Bye.